Welcome to the world famous Sail Power Steam Museum, South Rockland's finest maritime museum. My gosh, we've got a program for you tonight, all about the pilots of Penobscot Bay. There's our logo. We're doing all of these Zoom programs, and so it's so great to go back into history. I'm learning quite a lot from all the different things, but I am so impressed with tonight's program. I got to tell you, I take my hat off to all these Bay pilots, the Penobscot Bay pilots here. They are a breed of themselves and an amazing, amazing guys with they're top mariners. They have my vote, I'll tell you for that. Anyway, the first thing we've got to do is take a look at one of these pilots. Not only do they have to pilot these vessels back and forth, they have to be trapeze artists. This guy could work for the circus, you could tell that. But this is what happens. This is what happens when these pilots go out to go aboard a vessel and pilot it into the harbor. They are the best of the best. There's no doubt about it. They assume with quiet courage and quiet resolve the most amazing responsibilities of this world, guiding these great big vessels into these harbors. The vessels, you know, when vessels get near land, they get skittish. And any captain can come across the ocean with the electronics nowadays. They just punch a button, and when they get to the other side, where the danger starts, they quake in their boots. They get these incredible harbor pilots to come out and guide these vessels in through channels, rivers, harbors, sometimes many miles inland, into their berth to discharge all kinds of dangerous, polluting cargo, oil, gas, and all kinds of different cargoes. But these guys are mariners of the first magnitude. They are the real deal. And I take my hat off to them. My God, they do it not with epaulets and not with captain's hats and strutting around like a peacock. They do it with their $10,000 laptop in their backpack. They do it with out nautical jewelry and tattoos. They do it with a necktie and a white shirt on. And they are the real mariners. They are the real deal. But we got to get going first, and you got to suffer through a little bit of the commercial. So don't touch that dial now. We're going to go ahead and tell you just a little bit about the world famous Sail Power Steam Museum of South Rockland, South Rockland's finest maritime museum. This is our new building that we just completed. You can see the last fall flower there in the foreground. Our building now is housing our 40-foot steamboat. We've got a great steamboat in there, wood-burning boiler in it, 10-key calliope on the top deck. We've got a copy of the Light Horseman, the vessel that Weymouth discovered Penobscot Bay in 1605, the very first vessel to go through with Europeans on it and discover Penobscot Bay where the mountains meet the sea. We've got a Parashoff 12.5, a whole parcel of Optimus prams, a Beetle Cat, and a number of other little different vessels in there. We're going to have great viewing for different kind of boats in our new building. Well, we've got to move ahead. More things come in the door, you know. Last year, fall, a year ago, this vessel was given to the museum. Bob Pratt gave us this wonderful little ketch, Morning in Maine, that does harbor cruises. It'll take you out and it'll show you a couple of lighthouses right up close, take you out into the bay and get a wonderful tour of Rockland Harbor. And of course, our skiff program is another one of the feed on this octopus, this great octopus we have that's called the Sail Power Steam Museum. One of the legs of it is this skiff program, something that I'm really proud of. We take kids from 8 to 14 years old and give them a week-long sail training program. They don't know anything about a boat when they come. They don't know a centerboard from a rudder. They learn to rig the boats there, day one, the orientation, rig the boats, put them together, and we push them out, one kid to a boat. They have to put their telephones down. They have to get away from the internet, grab a hold of that tiller, and grab a hold of the sheet and the sail, and they go out there and they learn how to sail. Day 3, they learn to turn the boat over, bail it out again, go back to sailing again. Day 4, they hone their skills, and day 5, they have a great race out around the harbor out there, all of them racing each other. They're 10 to 12 kids in a class, and they are real sailors by that point. They want to turn around and do it all over again. But of course, we have a new class coming in right behind them. We graduated this past summer, 140 kids in our skiff program. Here's the way we do it. If you donate to skiff, if you donate $100, we will match your donation with another kid. So you get 2 kids for $100 to go through a whole week of sail training. You give us $200, we'll put 4 kids through it. So on, well, do the math all the way. Oh, forget the math. Just donate as much as you can donate. We got to keep these kids sailing. We couldn't do it without you. We've got to keep these kids away from their computers a little bit and learn some of the incredible things you learn, the individuality that you learn from sailing a vessel. We're also starting a class we call Sail the Classic, where we will livery out a boat to you. If you're a sailor and want to take a boat, you don't want to have the responsibility of owning it, of maintaining it and all that, it's okay. You come down, join our little club here, and you can take any of our boats out. If you're skilled enough, take any of our boats out, go for a sail, and we will do the maintenance. So it's a good chance. You can see all of the Optimus trams going around the buoy there on their last leg. It makes me warm and fuzzy all over. We have our Sunday Jam, wonderful community Sunday Jam, free Sunday Jam year-round, every Sunday afternoon from 1:30 to 4. People bring their instruments. A couple of weeks ago, we had 16 musicians. This past week, we had 9. But you never know how many are going to show up, and sometimes it's a stomping, raging, good sing-along, and sometimes it's a little quiet and very, comfortable. We have a great big tent down there. You can rent our tent for weddings, anniversaries, lunches, any kind of concerts, any kind of thing you want. Invite 150 people to come and have lunch, and you'll all crowd around down there under the tent. Well, now that's enough of that. Let's fold back this page and get going on the pilots of the Penobscot. This, I don't know where this was taken, but this is so typical of a pilot climbing a ladder, trying to get aboard one of these great big tankers, who is obviously light and way up out of the water. But this is the chance they take. And this is a beautiful day. This is a wonderful day. And the pilot boat alongside there, everything's calm and peaceful and happy. But it isn't always that way, is it, guys?
Just listen to the wind tonight.
Yeah. So then these pilots go aboard these great big vessels, and they have to take them up these little tiny, up the river, the little tiny river, round curves on the Penobscot River up there. They've got currents to worry about. They've got all kinds of hazards along the way, and they have to be really smart. And they have to be extremely skilled. And look at the responsibility they have in trying to thread the needle and get these things up into the port there at Bucksport. Here they are. David Glennis, why don't you tell us about yourself first?
Yeah, so this is a great picture. I didn't realize we had this. It's pretty tough to get all 4 of us together at one spot. So this is a cruise ship picture up in Bar Harbor one year. And Captain Dave Smith on the left side, myself, and then Captain Skip Strong, Prentice Strong, and Adam Philbrook, both who are on the call tonight. And this is taken aboard our pilot boat of many years up in Frenchman Bay. We had the services of a wonderful lobster boat captain, David Spear, aboard his pilot boat, the Frenchman Bay. So this is all of us in our Sunday best doing cruise ship work up in Bar Harbor.
Well, now, when did you graduate from Maine Maritime?
Well, Skip and I were classmates together at MMA, and we got out in '84. And I believe Captain Smith was he was '86, right, Skip?
Yes, he was 86.
And what about you, Adam?
Captain Adam, are you there?
I got out in 2000.
Oh, there you are. There you are.
So Adam would be the youngster, but we're getting some new blood in the organization, so he won't have that title for very much longer.
Well, when you came out of the academy, you didn't go right into the pilot Association, did you? Or
No,
did you?
no, all of us had pretty interesting careers at sea in one way, shape, or form. I'll let Skip fill you on his very distinguished seagoing career. I worked for about 9 years deep sea between tankers out of Valdez, and I worked for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia right out of school as a third mate on a ro-ro container ship, and then I ran anchors down in the Gulf of Mexico on oil barges for a few years, and then did a little tanker work out of New York City down to St. Croix for Hess.
Wow.
And I know David Smith had a pretty good career with I think it was with Exxon and then Maersk. But Skip's got an interesting background. I'll let him tell you about.
Well, now David Smith isn't with us tonight. Is that right? He's on vacation.
I don't think David's available tonight. No, that's correct.
Well, Skip, tell us a little of your experiences before you joined the Pilot Association.
So, like Dave said, both of us graduated from Maine Maritime Academy in 1984, and Dave has the distinction of being the only deck graduate out of the class of '84 to have a seagoing or deep sea seagoing job on graduation. He went to work. He was the only one out of, I think, 68 of us who graduated who actually got a job going deep sea. It was a tough time in the industry. My first job was, sailing as a mate on a sailboat, and then I worked on a sightseeing cruise out of a Gunkwit for the summer, and then I was mate on a tugboat until I finally managed to connect with a Keystone Shipping Company in the early months of 1985, and I spent 12 years sailing oil tankers essentially around the world. Carrying product, all over the place. And you spent 12 years doing that. And during that time, we would often come up into Searsport or Bucksport. We'd usually be up in this area once or twice a year. And that's how I got to meet, the pilots up here, meet Wayne, meet the other people. And they, I asked what it took to come in, and they said, well, get a chief mate's license. And when I finished getting my chief mate's license on the way back from the drive up from Boston, I stopped by the office and saw Billy Abbott and Gil Hall, and they invited me to come along for a ride with them. And that's how it started to work my way in with the pilots.
Yeah, I see. Great. That is amazing that I guess being a pilot is a real joy, but it seems to me if you're at sea, you'll get 3 squares a day, and you can sleep all night long. But when you're a pilot, you're on call all the time, doing all kinds of dangerous things. Adam, tell me a little about you.
Well, I got out of Maine Maritime in 2000, like I said before. I'd almost say, talking with hearing everybody else, you graduate from a lot of colleges, but Maine Maritime, you get out. And then after getting out of Maine Maritime, I worked for Sea River, which was ExxonMobil, for a few years on the chemical tankers and the chemical trade from Gulf Coast, East Coast. And then I worked for a tug and barge outfits out of New York after that for another 7 years, running refined products, mostly from the New York, Philadelphia area, all the way to Bucksport, all the way down to Baytown, Texas, North Carolina, whatnot. And I got a lot of boat handling and ship handling, we'll say, in that business. And, lived around here and worked around here. I got started with the pilots because I was a deckoneer on the tugboats up in Belfast, and I got to know them all. And after graduation, I went to sea, but I also got to start working as an apprentice with them a few years after graduation.
Yeah. So everybody's had a lot of experience before they came and joined the Pilot Association, that's for sure. Well, great. And Wayne, you've been associated with the pilots, well, forever. All the old guard and all the new guard, right?
Right. I started in 1964 and ran 53 years and retired in 2018.
And we were running.
I was a pilot boat for those years.
Running lobster boats, or did you have a boat specially for this purpose?
No, it was lobster style boats, lobster style cruisers, we'll say. Yeah.
Lobster style boats, yeah.
My last one was built in 1995, and I did have David and Skip come over and look at how we put the handrails on and different things to make it ideal for them. But that one was the last 25 years.
Great.
But Wayne, I got to be on the Cadillac boat for many years, but I do remember the stories. What about, I remember the first pilot boat. Can you tell them about the first boat?
The very first boat?
Yes, sir.
Well, Captain Abbott was used to rowboats, and he used to go up the river on the small tankers. And we had a 40-foot dragger that used to do the pilot boat work in Searsport. And fishing was really good, scalloping in the winter and stuff. And so they asked me if I'd do it, and I was actually lobstering out of a 14-foot Miracraft. And Captain Abbott said, "Well, that's okay, I'll do it." And so we started out in the 14-footer. Then we built up. I ran most of the years in the 30-footer, and then the last years were in the 36-footer.
Well, that's great. Well, now this next slide, you might be able to recognize the guy in this next slide. I don't know.
Yes, sir.
Is that a character or is that a character?
Yeah, I got to tell you a little story about that character. You know, he used to have a Lincoln with a 440 in it, and it said Pilot A on the plate.
Yeah.
And you talked about airline pilots. Well, he got stopped speeding one day, and the officer came up the window and he said, "You know, it's probably about time to land that thing." He thought he was an airline pilot, and so he gave him a little story and gave him a warning and told him to keep it on the ground.
Yeah, he had a great sense of humor, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he had a little word to the wise here, word of wisdom to pass on. And I have a recording of it. I'm going to see if I can play that recording, see if you can hear it.
So,
Could you hear that all right?
no, we didn't get, that didn't come through.
Didn't come through. Oh, that's too bad. Well, he was telling when you have a head tide, turn after you get to the turn. When you get a fair tide running with you, turn before you get to the turn.
Yeah. Fair tide, turn early, head tide, turn late. So Billy was famous for all these little sayings, and
Yeah.
And they were all appropriate. Every single one of them was spot on.
Uh-huh.
And you know, one of the ones that I remember him saying all the time was, "Don't fight the ship." That was Billy's big thing. Is if you've got a, you know, if you've got a ship, if you've got a flood tide, if you've got a westerly wind, you know, see what the environment is doing to your ship, and don't fight it. Use everything to your advantage. And I remember one of my earlier trips with Bill, I was undocking quite a large freighter with a lot of sail area, empty ship from the old B&A dock. And I was pretty early on in my training, but I thought I was making great strides. And Billy was doing the undocking with me before I took it down the bay. And I had a very elaborate undocking plan laid out with the wind and the tide. And I explained to Bill how I was going to take these lines in, hold this line, give it this rudder order, give it this engine order. And Bill kind of shook his head and he said, I don't know about all that, Dave. Why don't you just let the lines go and see what the ship wants to do? And he was really an ace ship handler.
He had a pretty bad accident, I understand, one time. They tell me, I guess Dickie Carver, Dickie, are you on here? Dickie Carver, speak up. Anyway, he was telling me about how I guess the Jacob's ladder caught on the lobster boat as the lobster boat was pulling away, and he was a third of the way up the ladder, and they couldn't do anything, and the lobster boat, I guess, was hooked onto the after end of the lobster boat, so it was steering the lobster boat away from the ship, and both of them are underway, and they cut the line, and of course, Billy was crashing into the side of the the ship and broke his nose and hurt his innards. But he continued on and docked that ship before they took him to the hospital.
Yeah, he was, Wayne, you probably remember that, but
I
the
do.
story I'd heard is he was quite badly hurt. And I don't think people understand is like, yeah, he made it to the top of the ladder, climbed up to the wheelhouse, piloted for probably a solid 5 hours, docked the ship, which takes an hour, and only then sought medical care.
Yeah, he actually went to anchor. I took
Oh,
him,
did he? Okay.
I took him off that night, and
you-
I had him put a line around him because you could see that he really wasn't up to going down the ladder all by himself, and so they put a line around him to help him down.
Yep. Well, you can just tell from the look of him. He's a great guy.
Well,
I-
he was tough. He was a tough guy.
Yeah, he was tough, all right. Born on Verona Island, and his father was a pilot before him, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, let's go on down through here. It amazes me how you guys can get aboard these vessels, and every vessel's different. Some of them have beautiful equipment, I'm sure. Some of them must have old time equipment, and foreign people in the wheelhouse and everything else. Every vessel's different going in, and then after they unload, it's a different vessel coming out again. You have to be skilled in so many different variables and be able to head up to so many contingencies here. It just boggles my mind how you guys do that and are the best of the best. You can't make a mistake. They don't put erasers on your pencils. That true?
If you make a mistake, you better catch it pretty quick.
Who's aboard here?
I'm not sure. So the last picture that you had, that was Doug Fournier, who was piloting or, conning the ship at that point in time. He's going to be the next full-time pilot coming into the organization. You'll be starting in January 1. But this one right here, I know I took the picture, so I'm not sure who was actually piloting it, but it was either Dave, or Adam bringing that one up the bay.
And that's a pretty typical vessel, Jim, going to Bucksport. That class of Irving ship is 37,000 deadweight tons, and they go up to Bucksport quite regularly.
Always fun going under the bridge as you're approaching there, and you watch all the cars slow down as they get to the middle of the bridge as you're going up in there.
Yeah. When I ran that video, you were all broken up. Did everybody else hear that? Or it was broken up on my computer, but
Okay.
Was it broken up on your computers?
Nope, I heard it.
I could hear it.
I could hear it.
Yeah, okay, well, yeah, I couldn't hear what you were saying. Anyway, Skip, this one here, we have one of the old time engine room controls here.
So that picture right there, that engine order telegraph up there in the left-hand corner, that's a real piece of maritime history. That ship was still running with that telegraph here up until about a year ago. That was on a tanker called the Chemical Pioneer, which had been running up and down the eastern seaboard for quite a long time. That ship actually started out as the Sea Witch, and was a container ship that was involved in a huge collision under the Verrazano Narrows Bridge with the SO Brussels and the Sea Witch. Huge fire on board there. I mean, it was a really bad thing, but they rebuilt the back end of the ship and turned it into the Chemical Pioneer. But that's the original telegraph from that ship back in the day. And as a personal note, my father-in-law, during this whole collision and fire in New York Harbor, my father-in-law was a docking pilot down in New York Harbor, and he was one of the people. He went up onto the burning Sea Witch to get the last two crew members off of the ship to do that. So it was there's a lot of maritime history wrapped up in that little telegraph right there.
And Skip, Sea Witch, wasn't she bath built too?
Yeah, she was a bath built ship.
And the center one here with all the computer consoles.
So this is what a typical, modern, this is particularly a cruise ship, but this is what you're looking at these days. You go from the antique telegraph, which was how you got things done, to everything on here is push buttons, as-upon controls, all electronics. You've got more information than you could possibly want to look at what's going on to help you get the job done these days.
But it blows me away. You guys go aboard a vessel and completely new pilot house. I mean, they're all so different, and you have to know enough about it to pilot these vessels up into these little small places with all this current. Well, you guys are the real deal.
It's sort of like going off to a rental car agency and getting a different car every time you go in there. You have a general sense of how the thing is going to operate, but you got to look to see what controls you have. You got to see how it's going to handle, how much space it takes up. You do have to look at things. You got to look at the rudder configuration. You got to look at the engine, the horsepower, bow thrusters, stern thrusters. All of that stuff will make the ship handle differently, and that's what we're good at. We've done a lot of ship handling, and we can get on there and pretty much tell you how a ship should react. And then, like Dave said, once we know we have an idea what it should do, but the reality is it may want to do something different, and we have to adapt to that.
And you are mariners from the first magnitude. You have the responsibility. You can't make a mistake. That's what amazes me. I mean, you guys really have the acumen. You have everything you need up in that gray matter to do this kind of thing. But what happens when you go aboard and you find there's a a note out of order on one of the essential pieces of equipment there?
You generally will stop the operation. I mean, I had a vessel just recently that the main engine didn't really want to start, and it was one of those things. It's like you give it a little bit of time, but to see if things can be resolved. But at some point in time, we've got to step in there and say, this is not safe. We're not going to do it. Get your problem fixed. Call the Coast Guard, resolve the issue, and once everything's resolved, we'll come back and finish the job. But we are, there to make sure that if things are not correct, we're not going to move the ship.
Yeah, sure. If you know
The tactful way to approach it is to say, Captain, would you like to call the Coast Guard, or would you like me to do that for you, sir?
Yeah. Well, the captain certainly doesn't want to move the ship in these conditions. Gosh, I just can't imagine it.
There's something called port state control now, Jim, with the Coast Guard, and it's actually raised the bar on these ships. In the 30 or so years that Skip and I have been piloting, there's actually been a pretty big improvement in the condition and equipment on the ships, and a lot of that is due directly to this concept and practice of port state control. And that's, all these flag states, all these groups are signatory to certain standards, and they are required to report any deficiencies before we get on a vessel. They are required to report any known deficiencies to their agent and then pass it on to the Coast Guard. And we work very closely with the Coast Guard. If there is a vessel coming with, say, one bad radar, they're required to have two. If one of them isn't working, the Coast Guard may put some conditions on it saying daylight transit only or good visibility only. So we are very fortunate that there's been a big improvement over the last few decades, thanks a lot to this port state control and the actions of the Coast Guard.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad something's going for you. There's the pilot boat. And is that one you're using today?
That's the pilot boat Dirigo, which was the ex-Old Dominion 1996 Gladding Hearn. Adam, you did the legwork on that. Why don't you tell them what we've gone through with that boat since we acquired it?
Well, I was very fortunate to talk with an old schoolmate of mine from the Virginia pilots, and he asked me if I wanted to know any new computer equipment for our navigation software. I said, no, Clarence, I don't want any new computer equipment. I want a new pilot boat. And he paused, and Clarence says, I got one of those too. So I told him to send me information on it. We sent the captain down to look at it, and we decided to purchase it. Captain Strong, myself, and our pilot boat captain, Jeff Haynes, we went to Virginia and delivered it back to Rockland in 2019. And soon after 2019, we all know what happened, but we still had a new pilot boat to work on, and we had some engine issues with it too. So we had to do either a big engine work, but they were old engines. They're all 892s. They burn a wicked lot of fuel. And I want to say it was probably 50 gallons an hour running at 18, 19 knots. So we replaced those engines with two John Deere 500 6135s, and she's a little bit thirsty still, but she's down to say 32 to 38 gallons per hour at 19 knots also. So she's been repowered with new transmissions, new engines, still the old hull, but it's a great boat. It's heavy, like 46,000 pounds, and it's just a really good boat. We still have parameters what we work in, but that boat improves the parameters. It makes it safer when we go out in 10-foot seas. That boat is just a really good platform to work on and off. And it's got heated decks to make the wintertime work a lot better. The decks are heated, so it's a lot safer.
Yeah, yeah. And you have the boarding station up on the top deck there. You climb up in
The only one who likes it is Skip.
I'm the only one who uses that. Everyone wanted one, and then nobody uses it except me. I love it. It shortens the climb going up the ladder. I absolutely enjoy using that.
Very good. And the guy at that wheel's got to have pretty good parcel of skills too, to be able to land you guys on the side of these ships. Who's running that boat?
That's Jeff Haynes. That's our pilot boat captain down in Penobscot Bay. That's actually off of our old boat, Penobscot Pilot, now called Acadia Pilot. That's a boat that we had built back in 2003. A giant step up as a platform from using the fishing boats, which we definitely enjoyed and liked doing, and it was the way that things were done, but this was a big step up. But this is one of the few boats that is designed to have a 0 CPA, closest point of approach, with another moving vessel. Basically, this and tugboats are the only thing that should get that close. And the hydrodynamics of bringing one moving vessel alongside of another one are, it's there's a lot of stuff going on there, and it takes a lot of skill to do that job.
Yes, sir. I would think so.
We're very fortunate. We've got a tremendous crew helping us both up in Frenchman Bay, Bar Harbor, and down here in Penobscot Bay. Captain Jeff Haynes is the full-time captain. Prior to Jeff working, we had the services of Jane Ryan for many, many years, who was a consummate captain. She did a great job for us. And, it's obviously we all have to work for a living, but we've had a lot of people kind of take a turn through the pilot boat thing. And a lot of times it's not about the money. It just takes a certain breed of person that likes going out in all kinds of weather, day or night, getting beat up and landing one boat right alongside of another. We've been very fortunate to find really great people to help us do that job.
Well, now, of course, you turn the vessel over so that you get a good lee on the proper side. But I've noticed a couple of times you say, bring the vessel to port, Captain, and you're swinging the vessel as you pull alongside. Doesn't that put a cross current underneath the ship?
Not if you do it right. What you're trying to do is sweep the ship sideways and basically lay the sea down. So you're putting the pilot boat to the inside of the turn on the ship. So by doing that, you get a lee, and it usually works out pretty well. Under extreme circumstances, you may have to make an entire round turn, a 360-degree turn. just to lay things down if you've got a confused wind and sea, like a fast moving front coming through. But you know, with a big ship, if you're patient, you can usually make a pretty decent lee. The problem is the smaller ships or the tugs and barges. That's a much harder job.
Yeah, yeah. Getting off and on tugboats, I understand, is probably the worst. Anyway, there's another view of that same vessel, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a different one than in the last picture, but it's the same one as the other picture looking down.
There's the
Yeah,
other
so
one.
that boat does the service on Penobscot Bay. That boat's in Rockland right there.
Mhm. Great. So,
So this is interesting. So, you know, the way we go to work is a pilot ladder.
Right.
And, you know, it hasn't changed since, you know, ships started floating. So this is still the way we go up there. What they've tried to do is make it as safe as possible for us to do it. So there are international regulations that, you know, set up for, you know, how a ladder is supposed to be built, the spacing of the steps, you know, all the various sorts of parameters. If you look at the diagram on the left, it just tells you everything that's wrong for doing stuff. And one of the things is, you know, a retrieval line. The regulations are very specific about what is correct, but it's never shown graphically any place. So this is something that we've been taking out to the ships now. There is only one proper way to rig a retrieval line for a pilot ladder, and it's the one with the check mark. But it's amazing that even though there are international regulations for it, probably 75% of the ladders that we come across for getting on and off ships are not properly rigged. And most of the time we can still make it on board safely, but this is where, you know, we're depending on the ships to do stuff correctly for us to get on and off the ship safely. But even something as simple as rigging a retrieval line is sometimes beyond the competency of some of the crews we meet.
when you're on the side of that ladder hanging on with all your worth, and you look up and there's an Indonesian crew up there, they don't speak English. You ever wonder about what kind of a knot they tied on the top of that ladder?
Well, you always hope. You always hope that either they tied a good knot or they're nice and heavy, that they're standing on the ladder, so it's not going to go anyplace.
Yeah. Well, very interesting.
I got a comment on that. Those top two ladders. That's what got Captain Abbott in trouble down off Manhegan. That loop down in the water caught in the stern of the lobster boat down there.
Yep. So that's the biggest thing right there, is that loop that's down there on the bottom that can easily get caught on the pilot boat. And if the pilot boat pulls away, that ladder is coming off the side of the ship. And that is exactly how Captain Abbott got hurt.
Yeah. Well, when you say retrieve the ladder, do they pull the ladder up sideways?
Well, so they can do a couple of things. They can use it to, you know, pull it up to get it clear of the water, because that's a heavy ladder. And if you've got only two people up at the top trying to pull that thing up, but if you can pull up on that retrieval line and take half of the weight off the ladder, then it's easier to pull up. But, you know,
I see.
For those crews on board, it's easier if they pull from the bottom. For us climbing up the ladder, it's safer when that thing is rigged properly, you know, at the first spreader bar above the bottom of the ladder.
Great. Well, now we're going alongside a passenger vessel here, and I'll try and play this video. I don't know if we can talk at the same time. There's a lot of noise. Here we have a fender sticking out over, and the bigger slider is going out over the riser on the side of the hull. So it's suspended in the air, practically. And they were,
That's a non-compliant skip that's been on ship's target list for 2 years. So
I hate that ship. That ship has been around since Dave and I started piloting in the mid 1990s. That thing was non-compliant on the day that it was built. It's still non-compliant. They're still running around. But we actually this year actually had some decent communication with the people there that they are going to finally, you know, change their boarding arrangement, because that's just, you just look at the side of there. There's so many ways for the pilot boat to get damaged, a pilot to get hurt on a something, an arrangement like that.
Your fenders came right up underneath the thing. Yeah.
That's correct.
Now tell me about the two lines that are hanging down there.
So those are man ropes, and man ropes, they're called man ropes, and they are a way that not so much going up, but for coming down a ladder, especially a long ladder, that it can make it, somewhat easier to get off if you like to use the man ropes. You can hold on to those man ropes with your hands, keep your feet on the ladder steps, and work your way down. It's something that, on some ships, I certainly use it a lot. But it's a personal preference for whether you like to use that. But that is something, as opposed to just trying to hold on to the ladder there as it's curving over the edge of the deck. That man rope goes farther up, and it's something easier to hang on to. But it's primarily used when you're getting off the ship, not so much when you're boarding the ship.
I see. I wondered, the hanging down there looks like something you could grab if you missed your step or something.
If you miss the step, you're going in the water.
And this water's going by. What the ship's doing? 8, 9 knot?
Yeah, probably 7 to 8 knots. Yes,
Yeah.
Correct.
And you'd be towing yourself along, trying to stay afloat. God,
that's why we all wear flotation devices when we're coming on board.
But and the vessel's moving ahead, propellers back there somewhere. And what happens when you reach the stern? If you're floating, would you not be sucked in under the vessel?
Well, we don't want to find out.
No, I sure don't. I can understand that, but then here it is at night. It's bad enough during the day, but it's late at night, and these are good conditions. These are probably the finest conditions to go aboard. In the dead of winter with the snow blowing horizontally and any sea making, my gosh, it seems though it would be a whole lot more difficult.
It is. The nice thing, I don't know if you can hear me over the noise in the video, but these are short climbs for us. The cruise ships are absolutely about the shortest ladders we ever get to climb. Going up the side of a light tanker in Penobscot Bay, you can be going up close to 30 feet going up there. And this is 6, 7 foot climb going up.
Yeah, whoops. Yeah, that's comparatively easy going. I can see that. And of course, there's a lot of light around there.
Yeah, there's a lot of light. Those are relatively easy jobs. The cruise ships generally come in the time of year where we have nicer weather. So, everything being equal, those are relatively easy jobs for us, even though they can be big ships. There's a lot of horsepower on there to make them do what we would like them to do. And it's a nice, easy climb. And generally the coffee's pretty good, and the croissants are usually pretty tasty too.
Yeah. Well, now here's another one that would scare me to death. I don't know. I wouldn't look forward to. And this again, it could be wintertime with snow blowing horizontally and ice all over everything. Oh my God.
Well, this is definitely wintertime. There's no question about that. I'm dressed up for full-on winter. But there's no ice on deck right now, which is pretty nice.
Yeah. And here's the Jacob's ladder swinging back and forth with the sea running by there. And you got to wait until the boat comes up on the top of the swell and That doesn't look like fun to me.
All depends on what you're used to.
Yes. I take my hat off to you. My God, that's seems like a hard way to make a living, but
When you look at those videos, it's really important to notice that there's never any jumping involved. I hear a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, the pilots jump from the pilot boat to the ship or the ladder." But I mean, if you run those videos back and look at them slowly, you'll notice that the pilots, whether that one with Skip or the previous two with myself, we always have one hand on the ladder and one hand on the pilot boat before we fully commit to transferring our body weight over. But it's dangerous enough as it is. But the concept of actually leaping for a ladder, that's not part of the program.
no, I can understand that. And then the disembarking, that sometimes I would think would be the more dangerous or the more difficult. That's a comparatively easy one there. But you know, if the weather's really bad, you guys are too busy to take pictures of it. So
Correct.
all
We don't take pictures in the really bad weather.
that's right. You can't afford to. So all we have are the mild ones, the nice looking ones. I mean, here we go again, the Jacob's ladder up to a ramp, and this is on the top of your pilot boat, I guess, the upper station. Is this you, Skip?
Oh, that is Captain Greg Smith, who is the grandson of Granville Smith, one of the Portland dock pilot. But he was trying that upper ladder there, which is a little too tight for getting up there and doing stuff. But you know, that's a classic combination ladder rig of you're going from a pilot ladder to an accommodation ladder to get on board.
Uh-huh. Well,
If you look at that picture on the left where Greg is, you see those little yellow squares that are on the hull. So one of the improvements that's happened over the years is the ladders now have to be tied off and the gangways have to be tied off. I know Dave and I both have fond memories of, taking a ship out there and, rolling as we're getting on or off, and, the pilot ladder and the gangway coming 5-6 feet off the side of the ship and slamming back into it. With
yeah.
these new magnets or the ladders being secured to the hulls, we don't have that issue anymore, which is that's a significant safety improvement. The time that we've been working out here.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Gee. Huh. Well, this is a different boat. This is the new boat.
That's our old boat. That's the Penobscot Pilot there, coming up to a one of the little break bulk ships, probably bringing wind turbine components in there. And then Adam is over there on the right hand side driving a tugboat. I'm going to assume that's going to be going up the Penobscot River.
Uh-huh. What kind of a ship is this?
Another little cargo ship, and it bringing in wind turbine blades.
These are wind turbine blades. I thought that.
Yep.
They're enormous.
Oh yes. Most of the blades that we were bringing in were in, I would say, the 125 to 150 foot length for doing stuff for the turbines that they were building here in the state of Maine.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did a lot. There has been and probably will continue to be a fair amount of importing of wind turbine blades coming into Searsport.
Yeah. Well, it's really incredible. And of course, this again is a beautiful day. It's pretty calm. But it's tricky business whether it's a beautiful day or not. That's fascinating. Here we are coming downriver. So you turn early with a fair tide?
Well,
That one you're coming right. That one you're coming right off the dock. That's right off the Dead River dock.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that's just getting flipped around off the dock.
Yeah.
Because a tanker that size wouldn't go any further up than Bucksport. So that's literally just coming off the dock in Bucksport and getting shaped up to make that first turn and get under the bridge safely.
Mm-hmm. Now, tell me about that.
So this is on the approach into Bar Harbor, and you can see the red line is the track line that they have laid out, which actually follows a recommended route that is published on the chart. All of those little radar return targets that you are seeing, that's lobster buoys. You've got a radar that is really, it's a good radar. It's picking up all the lobster buoys there.
Oh my God.
You can see how much fishing gear is in the water, but because we have the recommended routes, the fishermen know where the pilots are going to go, and it allows a corridor for the ships to maneuver through there without interfering with the fishing gear. It certainly, it definitely takes away a little bit of bottom from the fishermen, but it keeps the ships out of the fishing gear. And we have this instituted in both, Penobscot Bay, where we have the cruise ships, which this radar is from there, but it's also, we have a recommended route down in Penobscot Bay as well. And it has probably done more than almost anything else over the years to minimize the conflict between arriving and departing vessels and fishing gear. And Dave Gelinas is the one who got this all going back in mid 1990s, probably is when he
Right.
Yeah, early 90s.
Early 90s.
With,
Promulgated this, and this is now a tool that's used fairly frequently certainly along the eastern seaboard, for having recommended routes for ships to travel that either recreational boaters, fishermen are going to know where the ships are going to be.
Yeah. Fascinating. Great. Now here's a wintertime picture, Vijay. Look at this. I mean, even if your decks are heated, you still get snow on them.
Well, and that's our old boat with no heated decks on there, and that's Jane Ryan, our one of our former captains on there, scraping the boat down before we head out for doing that. And you can see Doug Fortier standing over there on that bridge wing, docking a ship in Searsport. You can see the guys on the ship were very nice. They shoveled out a little path for him to stand in, so he wasn't standing in 6 inches of snow.
They didn't shovel very much more than they had to, though, did
they don't shovel more than they have to, but
they probably didn't have a shovel. They probably did that with their hands.
So here we're headed up with a barge with 2 tugs.
Yeah, that's one of the transits down from the Chinbro facility. Upbound with the light deck barge is inbound to Chinbro and Brewer, and the one with the modules on top of the barge would be the outbound transit. So that's what Chinbro refers to as the Eastern Manufacturing Facility.
Huh. And the light barge here in the ice?
Yeah, so that's the empty, what's called the deck barge. That's just a flat ocean class deck barge that's going up to Brewer to get a load of modules to ship down to probably a refinery in the Gulf of Mexico.
So the only place we encounter ice really is or any significant ice is when we're going up to Bangor. We're doing that type of stuff.
Yeah, that's a great classic Wayne Hamilton photo right there. That's the that one you just had up, Jim.
Chinbro thing, yeah.
Yeah, that was if I'm not mistaken, that's March of 2009. That's the first downbound load of modules going down to the refinery in Texas. And that's what put Chinbro on the map. That's why they developed that fabrication facility at the site of the former Eastern Fine Paper facility in Brewer, Maine. There were 4 different yards, fabrication facilities. 3 of them were U.S. Chinbro up in Brewer. Then there was a facility down in South Carolina, and I believe there was a facility down in Texas somewhere, or down south in the Gulf. And there was one other facility in Mexico that was building these modules. The refinery was built in modules, basically plugged together, bolt together modules to make this refinery. And the Chinbro facility was the only one that delivered their product on time and on budget. Every other yard was delayed, and nobody had to work through the winter like Chinbro did. So this was a real huge success story. They're getting ready to do it all over again. They're getting spooled up now to do a multi-year job, renovating the dry dock down in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So you're going to see a lot more work similar to this. It's going to be big cement, precast cement modules instead of steel modules coming down now. But they've done a bang up job up there in Brewer, really taking advantage of Maine's maritime connections and deep water, and using that facility to make big heavy things and put them right on the water and get them right down to the site. That was a great job. I remember that job, doing that day, because people were literally coming down through the woods in March on the banks of the Penobscot River to wave and toot air horns and see that first load come down the river. That was a great day.
Terrific. And you have to work with all kinds of different tugboats.
Yeah, Adam, you probably know what's the specifics on the boys?
The Fournier Boys was built specifically for narrow berth operations that you'd have Fort Lauderdale, where you'd be docking, or Port Everglades, where you'd be docking 2 ships next to each other really tight. And the neat thing about that boat is there's a drive. We're just going to call it starboard bow and port quarter, because really you can't really tell what that is on that thing. It's about 52 feet wide and 90 feet long. But he's got like a drive, not a shaft, but he's got a Z drive on the starboard bow and on the port quarter. So it kind of runs like 2 outboards in a way. And he can lay alongside and have 100% power. He can come out to a 90 like that and have 100% power. And the neat thing about that boat is that he can just lay right alongside and do push-pull mode in an incredible way like that. It's a very handy unit, very powerful. It is built right. It's a little tricky to learn how to drive. It's like anything you know about boat handling and ship handling, just throw it out the window and start new. That's the best way to do it with that type of unit. But that's only that is built for down south, but it works great up here where this slip is a little bit narrow going into Sprague with the wider body ships going up there and docking.
There is only one of these up here, isn't there?
Yes, there's only one up here. There's a couple in Spain, and I think there's a couple down south as well.
Wow. Very interesting.
Ship docking modules, SDMs.
This is a far, a huge improvement from what we started out with when Dave and I were starting to dock ships here, when we had old single screw, old railroad tugs. They were good for what they did, but they were definitely, we really you had to work hard and think well in advance of what you're going to do with the old tugs. The new tugs make life a whole lot easier.
Well, I'll say. I started with Arthur Fournier when he first came to Maine. And we started with the old Pauline Holmes and the Thomas St. Philip and all of those. When we finally worked our way up to a vessel like the Bronx, we thought we were in heaven.
Yep, Bronx and the Brian F. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was something. Yeah, I was with Arthur for 7 years, so we had Gil Hall and Bill and all the old pilots back at that time. Here we are alongside the vessel. Whoops, hit the wrong button. Get back aboard the vessel. And this is state of Maine.
Yep, that's the state of Maine. This was during the pandemic, and instead of them going away to get fuel, they, for the first time ever, we bunkered the state of Maine in Castine. We brought a fuel barge up there, and she took on a load of fuel oil before she went out on cruise that year, since they were basically not going anywhere during, during the pandemic. It wasn't even 2020, it was 2021 that they did this. I'm not even sure they had much of the way about any port calls, but they, brought the fuel up there. As I say, it was just an interesting shot because it's something that even in the 26 years that I've been doing stuff, I've never brought a fuel barge in alongside the state of Maine in Castine.
So Skip, did you do that one inbound? Was that your shot?
That's my shot.
Okay, who took it out?
Not me. I'm not sure who took it out. Adam, did you do it?
I took it out. Yeah.
So just the one assist?
When I sailed, I had an assist because I think I had an assist sailing, but we made up heads and tails coming off the ship. It was very
really?
easy. Yeah, but I'm sure we had an assist because I don't think I took that all the way down the bay.
That looks like a pretty good sized barge.
Oh, it's the DS-59, I think is what it was. I mean, it's the same thing that we just had up here, or similar size barge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, how close is close? I think you.
Yeah, so that's the caption that I put on the one to the lower left. So those two ships, they're actually two different ships, but they're the same class of ships. So that's called a Supramax, S-U-P-R-A Max, and that's the largest of the handy size class bulk ships that are the most common, most numerous bulk freighters in the globe, around the globe. And that's what we get to bring all of our salt into Searsport. So we get quite a few of these ships between salt or pet coke, petroleum coke, and it's just they're big. They're about 650 feet long by 106 feet wide, and they'll come in at about 38 feet of draft. We've had them as deep as almost 40 feet, but usually it's between 36 and 38 and a half feet or so. And yeah, it's deceptive. You've got all those, electronics like we've been talking about, and everything tells you you've even got a mate up on the bow saying, yep, bow's clear of the dock, you're good to turn. And you're back there on the port bridge and you're saying, I don't think so. I'm going to wait a little bit.
God. There's so much at stake, so much responsibility. So you got to have all this training.
Yeah, the picture on the left is a training trip that I made quite a number of years ago. The foremost ship handling school in the world is actually in Grenoble, France. It's called Manned Modeling Ship Handling in Grenoble, and that's actually me on that little model, that large model. That's I'm the guy in front steering, and it's tremendous. It's tremendous hands-on experience. I mean, simulators are great, and we do a lot of training on simulators, and they're getting better all the time. But this is still considered the gold standard for ship handling training. Is this manned model ship handling? We're very fortunate that we've worked closely with the Maine Department of Environmental Protection for 20 years now, and they dedicate a portion of their oil spill cleanup funds to pilot training. And they actually will pay for 75% of our training for facilities like this. We pay 25, and the Maine DEP gives the pilot commission enough money to pay for 75% of the training. Otherwise, we could not get this training. I forget the last time I checked. I think this training is running about $12,000, $13,000 a week. and it's really invaluable. So we're very grateful for the relationship we have with the MDP and them being forward thinking and helping us get
Wow.
emergency ship handling training. And I just like that picture on the right, because that's Skip and I 11 years out of school. And I don't think either of us would have ever thought that we would have been bringing a tanker, a 35,000 ton tanker into Bucksport, him as captain and myself as pilot 11 years after graduation.
Oh, gee. Well, it's fascinating. This is another great one. My wife and I have cruised the canals over in France, and we had a 60-foot barge and did a lot of this kind of passing.
If you look as you're doing this, I slowed it down. This is actually down in Louisiana, but you look at those bows, you are getting pushed to either side right now. Those bow, that water wall in there is pushing the bows out and away, and you're meeting and coming back, and as you get out there, you're going to watch that bow get sucked right back into the middle of the channel in the hole with the vessel left behind it. But this is another man model school down in Louisiana that just provides us with training that no one's going to let us use real ships to do this type of training, but it is
Oh,
extremely.
I thought we were still in France. That's great.
Oh, that's South Louisiana right there.
South Louisiana.
This particular one.
Wow, great. Uh-huh. And this must be a bunch of trainees.
No, this is, so during the pandemic, one of the things that, we had the opportunity to do as pilots, because we're seeing all these ships, when the pandemic hit and everyone stopped working, we didn't stop working. We kept working, and we sort of figured out, how to do stuff and stay healthy and keep going. But one of the things we were able to do through us as pilots and through my wife, who was standing there in the middle, who is also a Maine Maritime Academy graduate, but got smart and went off to medical school after she had done some maritime stuff, is we were able to facilitate some of these crews getting vaccines for COVID during this thing. Most of these guys were Filipinos, Eastern Europeans. And at this point in time, when we were able to start getting vaccinations for these guys, the vaccination rate in their home countries was hovering around 1%. So these guys were ecstatic to be able to come here and be able to get vaccinated, which would help them when it was time to travel home, crew change, get back and see their families without having to worry about potentially bringing something bad home with them.
Yeah. And they're just building the bridge here.
Yep, just putting the pieces together.
And salt for the roads.
Yeah, so
Roads.
that's one of the Supermax ships coming in, and that's pretty much that's what it looks like when you bring in 55,000 tons of salt. You dig it out in great big clamshells. You dump it on the dock. They have hoppers there that they'll dump it into the hoppers, and they'll put it into the trucks. They'll use bulldozers like you see in that big picture there. They're just picking it up with the big bucket loader and putting it right in the big triple axle truck there. So just a tremendous amount of activity when those big bulk ships are in the port. I mean, you're only seeing one bucket loader and one truck there, but there might be as many as 20 trucks lined up just doing circles on that dock, and 3 of those bucket loaders at various places on the dock just dumping and filling, dumping and filling. It's a tremendous amount of activity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, well, that's something that that was a whole new level of work that came. We lost for 2 years with the pandemic. We lost all of our cruise ship traffic up in Bar Harbor, Frenchman Bay, but the well-heeled of the world decided to take refuge aboard their mega yachts, and of course they couldn't travel overseas either. So we hosted an absolute pile of these super yachts, or mega yachts, if you want to call them. So that's the yacht Excellence. She's 262.5 feet long, going under the Deer Isle Bridge. And I'm not so sure, Jim, I don't know, or Wayne, if you guys know from some of the older commercial guys around, I'm wondering if that's the largest vessel that's ever gone underneath that bridge. I think our air draft on that ship was about 79 feet, and the bridge clearance above high water is 85. I know it was close enough where we were watching it closely. So that's what we did. These, the state of Maine has a pretty generous exemption for private yachts. You don't have to take a state pilot on a private yacht until you're over 77 meters in length, which is 253 feet. And that exemption was made probably back around 2012, 2014. And at the time that the state made it, there were about maybe 24 vessels, private yachts in the world that were over 253 feet in length. And as of this year, there's 166 of them. So we are seeing more of these mega yachts and super yachts, and it's interesting. It's interesting work, and that was an interesting trip.
Great. The Muirberg, what's that bulk cargo?
It's a little general cargo ship. This is the kind of ship that would bring in windmill blades or baled pulp, and it's about 18,000 tons deadweight. That particular ship, Captain, I forwarded to include on this slide because it was interesting to me for two things. Number one, the captain was showing me that company now routinely transits the Arctic with their vessels going between Europe and Asia. And it's the first time that I met a commercial shipping company that it's not theoretical. They're actually going through the Arctic in the summertime. The other thing that I get frustrated about is I asked the captain where he was going after this. They were going to finish some baled pulp going up to Albany. Then they were going to come back out of the river, and they were on their way up to the port of Duluth, Minnesota, to load a cargo of sugar beet pellets to go to Europe. And I'm endlessly frustrated why in Searsport we are not able to take advantage of cargoes like that and ship that cargo by rail to Searsport so we could load ships. Because for that ship right there, the Ammerborg, to get to the port of Duluth, she has to go 2,300 miles up the St. Lawrence Seaway through 11 different sets of locks, 14 different pilots. The lock and pilotage fees are probably tens of thousands, if not well in excess of $100,000 just to get in and out. And even at that, they can't load down to their maximum 31-foot draft because the draft in the Seaway is 26 feet. So I just thought it was interesting. I don't think we're doing enough. I've always felt like we had more potential to do cargo in Searsport, and that particular ship really brings the point home.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Now the Stony Stream. I don't know if we can do this or not, but we'll give it a try. We have your plan of docking on this vessel,
Right.
and we'll see if we can bring it up.
So this particular vessel, as you see there, it's one of these Supramax 65,000 ton vessels. And the interesting thing about this was that this vessel had to get backed into the bulk dock.
Yeah. There we go. So now, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep. And we'll just move this along a little quicker than. So you can see the vessel's moving towards the berth, towards the dock.
I don't think we're looking at your video, Jim. We're still seeing the picture of the ship.
Really? Well, tells
You
me.
might have to share your other screen where that one's playing, but that's all right.
I don't, I'm still sharing the screen. You don't see that vessel turning around there, huh?
No.
No?
Tim, he's right. It's sharing on a different screen. That's the problem. You would have to change the screens that you're sharing. So it's probably best to just keep going to your next slide, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay. Well, this is very, very interesting the way that, yeah. I'll have to get out of that one, yeah. Turned it around and backed it into place.
Yeah.
That, yeah, that was fascinating. There are a few more of the windmill blades. Is that what that is?
Yep.
Yep. What was there?
Depending on what the ships, some of the ships will have the cranes center line, some of them will have them port side, some of them will have them starboard side, and you know, depending on how they've got to unload, we may have to back ships in, we may have to bring them straight in. You never quite know what we're going to get until we hear how their configuration is going to be, and then we dock them accordingly so they can come in there and unload their cargo.
Huh. I don't know what this is all about. Get rid of that. Well, we'll change gears here a little bit, huh? The Hermon, the French frigate, came over and was welcomed into the United States. And here's the pilot boat getting ready to bring him into Castine. Now, tell me about this one, David.
Well, this I think Skip's probably got more details on it. He was the pilot. I rode along on the tug, but very famous vessel over in France, a replica vessel that was built over there and came to visit the U.S. And Skip got the call and did the job, and he was the perfect guy for it because he'd sailed boats in and out of Castine for a long time, and he's quite a nautical history buff, so I think he was quite happy and quite comfortable being the pilot of the Hermione.
So this was a fun thing. This was a full-on sailing ship. The first one that I'd ever been on board for doing it and coming up the bay. This was a replica of a ship that came here in 1778 during the time of the Revolution, when France was on our side and these guys were coming over here. If you look at the chart segment on the right-hand side, you see the picture of the drawing of the ship, and that's in East Penobscot Bay, just down below Castine and above Cape Rozier. This is a replica of a chart that the navigators on the Hermione drew when they were in Penobscot Bay. That was it back in the day. You had to draw your own charts. You had to make your own charts for doing this stuff, or get copies of charts from someone else who had been there. But where that ship is actually depicted on the chart is where the ship anchored when the original ship anchored when they were in Penobscot Bay. So the captain and mates were showing me this chart that they had, or this replica of the chart that they had. They were saying, "Oh, this is where the ship anchored." When we're going up the East Penobscot Bay, I look at the chart, I look up, I look back at the chart, and I said, "Captain, we need to come port 20 on the rudder right now." And he said, "What? Why? We're going up to Castine." I said, "Yes, we are. But if you want to go directly over the spot that the ship anchored in, we need to come port 20 right now, and I will take you over that exact same spot where the ship anchored back in the 1700s." And they got a big kick out of that one.
Good. Yeah. So there she's arrived. Quite a reception for her.
Yep, it was a big deal having that thing come back down in there.
Yep, yep.
When they fired those guns, that was some impressive.
Didn't blow the windows out of the academy, did it?
Well, they were still out in the East Bay when they did that, Jim, but
Oh.
I'll tell you what, if they'd have been inside the harbor, something might have broken. I mean, it I don't know if that picture does it justice. It was loud. You could feel
Wow.
it.
Yep. One Bastille Day. So we have more videos here of chasing vessels up the bay. I'm not sure how they'll come out as far as noise goes.
Not quite at the 9-meter mark, but it'll be all right.
I gotta hide them, not wax on the head with it. Hit it when it's really low.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
yeah.
just like right at head height. And I get extremely nervous.
Yeah, that's the problem with them breaking it like that. It's like I almost rather just go straight up the ladder at that height. So, I mean, she's right at the 9-meter mark right there.
It's right on it.
Yeah.
So what they're talking about is that white mark there, just behind the pilot ladder. The bottom end of that mark is red, and that is the dividing line of 9 meters where you need to have just a pilot ladder rig or a combination ladder rig. So a lot of the Irving ships that we have are right at that borderline spot for getting on board.
Here again, it's a beautiful day.
I'm good from here.
All right.
You can see that retaining line tied off to the bottom of the ladder.
Yep, that's rigged in correctly.
Yep. Well, I learned enough.
Have a good trip. We'll see you in a bit.
I learned enough to be critical.
anybody's interested, there's a ton of videos that Skip has filmed that are posted on our website that show conditions not quite as nice as this.
Well, it's hard to think of wintertime going out there and doing that stuff. But you must see some beautiful sunsets and sunrises.
Oh, absolutely. Those are, it's a nice time of day to be out there at sunrise and sunset for doing that stuff. I mean, it's very pretty.
In the summertime.
Well, even in the wintertime, you actually have some better sunsets in the sunrises in the wintertime than you do during the summertime.
Uh-huh.
Camden Hills look pretty nice day after a big snowstorm. You get that front come through and there's a foot of snow on the Camden Hills. You're going up the bay and it's a
Mhm.
clear day. It's a pretty nice sight to see.
Yeah, it must be beautiful. That's true. Yeah.
This must have been a while ago, Dave. Your hair was darker.
Yeah.
But oh, that's pretty nice navigating out there. That nice calm sea like that. There's a little breeze there, good enough for a schooner to be out there and
Yeah.
enjoy the weather. So great to have the electronics. When I started with a schooner, we went 10 years without any radar. And I'll tell you, I lost a lot of hair on my head.
Yeah. The advances in electronic navigation are pretty unbelievable.
Yeah.
Penobscot Bay and River.
Good morning, sir. Channel 10, please. 10.
10. Penobscot Bay and River.
Yes, good morning, sir. We'll be on station shortly. Please have the ladder rigged on your starboard side. Starboard side, 1 meter above the water. Boarding speed of 7 knots. Over.
Understood, double side, 1 meter. Forward and back, and boarding speed 7 knots.
Thank you very much. You're always standing by on channel 10 as well as 16 and 13.
10, 16 and 13, roger.
As you can hear in that video, a bit of a foreign language. And the neat thing about our jobs is the world comes to us. That was probably a Latvian or a Russian officer, but the world comes to us. And that's the neat thing about it. We get to eat food from all over the world, Indian food, Filipino, Eastern European. It is great. It's a neat career and a neat way to see the world in Penobscot Bay.
And you are ambassadors. You're ambassadors for the United States. Go aboard these foreign vessels, and you're the first person they see in the new country.
Yes.
So,
And the neat thing about it, pick up a lot of the languages, and just as you come up with a rail and there's a Filipino there, and you say Magandang umaga, and he knows exactly. You see a little smile when you say good morning, or Magandang hapon, and they love it. They don't expect that, but it bridges that gap really quickly.
Yeah, the electronics are amazing. When you think of your plotter, you go aboard with your backpack and your computer in there, and you can plot the position of the vessel within 1 foot.
Yeah, the systems that we carry are accurate. They call them sub-meter accuracy. But I think just as important though, Jim, is that, we used to spend a lot of money getting the best equipment to get that kind of accuracy. But I think just as importantly now is any recreational boater can have almost the same degree of accuracy now. The the electronics are so good now that there really is no excuse for a recreational boater to be out on Penobscot Bay without
Well,
a
it
good
always
chart
bends around the
plotter.
aisle, the land
And
here.
AIS
We know
is
that.
another big help to us and the recreational boaters to see where the ships are, to allow us to see where recreational boats are. So we saw the advances in the electronics on the high end of our job very early, but there's a big trickle down now, and almost any recreational boater can take advantage of the same technology that
Swing to the
we're
north.
using.
Yes. Well,
Sunny
it's-
Royal, pilot boat, channel 13.
Tim, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Could you give us a swing to starboard, please?
Cut to the swing to the starboard.
Right here. Yep. Yep.
there you're going up on the top deck, huh?
Watch your fingers,
I'm
Ed.
getting old, I'm getting old and I'm getting lazy. If I can shorten up that climb, I'm gonna shorten up that climb.
There we go.
Welcome aboard, sir.
All right, good afternoon.
How are you, sir?
Very good, thank you.
Little groundswell here to put up with.
Yep, that's the one thing about the coast of Maine is there's not much of a lee out here in most
Yeah.
places. We are open to the Gulf of Maine and then the wider Atlantic beyond it.
Yeah. Oh my God, yes.
Frenchman Bay seems to be particularly tough in that regard. There really isn't any kind of a break. Once you get out by the pilot station, it's really wide open.
Yeah. Well, that sure looks pretty uninviting right there.
So this was one where, it was just so bad on that side. There was no way anyone was going to get safely on board there. So we thought we could do it, but that's the other thing is we change. We change. You can change plans in this, and what we do is, we say, nope, that's not going to work. None of us are going to be, foolish enough to try and do that.
Right.
Damage the boat, damage us. So we just go over there and rig it up for the other side. And here it is on the other side. It's not great, but it's far better than what it was on the other side.
Well, it's certainly not great.
Well, it's almost like any profession that you have. If it was easy, anyone could do it. We're trained to do this, and this is what we're comfortable doing.
Well, it's bad enough to do the gymnastics to get aboard and get off of the ships out there. But then to be able to pilot the vessels, a strange vessel, up the Penobscot River with the currents and the bends and the turns and the tidal swirls and all the other hazards, well, it just seems that's almost.
You stack the odds in your favor, Captain. It's for Bucksport. We try and dock on the time of slack water. We restrict the transits up there to daylight. So you do what you can to minimize the risks.
Yeah. Whoops. I guess
And
this.
Jim, before you go to the next slide, we had a comment that I thought maybe some of these guys might like to address. Bob Bacco is on our advisory council and he had to leave. So he left a message in the chat saying that unfortunately I have to leave. Thanks for an informative presentation. I'm a maritime lawyer and teach admiralty and maritime law, Maine law in Portland. For my last final exam, I used a fictional Maine pilot as the main subject. I want to make a pitch for the, is it cabotage?
Yes.
Cabotage laws set out in the Jones Act. If we don't protect US tonnage, future pilots will have a heck of a time getting the experience they need to become pilots. Support US flag shipping. Thank you all for a great presentation.
Yep, he brings up a really good point. I mean, all of us got our experience, working on U.S. flag ships and gaining, raising our licenses from third mates to second mates, chief mates, and captains. And you could certainly become a pilot without going that route. But I believe it's important to have that experience and understand what it is you're actually working on. To do it as piloting. Some areas don't do that and they work just fine there. It's my personal preference that I think it's a good way to get the experience and understand what you're doing as opposed to someone who might have just been trained to be a pilot from day one. But it's, it's personal preference for that. But yeah, it is. In order to be a pilot, you have to have a lot of experience.
So is the Jones Act requiring that? Is that what he's referring to?
Well, what he's referring to is the Jones Act, which is the law that cabotage laws are laws that maritime nations have in place to protect domestic cargoes moving within their borders to domestic ships. And it's not unique. The Jones Act is unique to the United States, but cabotage in general is practiced by most or a lot of maritime nations. But a lot of times you hear people complain about the Jones Act. A, it's ancient, it's a very old law. And B, farmers complain about it, or a lot of people say that it raises the price of American goods. But the analogy that I always think about is, you wouldn't think it would be okay for someone, say, from Air Sudan to fly from Boston to Dallas to do airline flights domestically within the US with an entirely foreign crew on a foreign plane under foreign regulations. And that's what the Jones Act does. It says that domestic cargo traveling between US ports goes on US flagged, US built, US manned ships.
Well, that last one, that last video doesn't seem to be working.
Well, a lot of these, if people want to go up, a lot of these are up either, on the pilot's Facebook page or through our website. You can also see some of the, get these videos as well and see them on there and look at these things.
I see.
But yeah,
Okay.
they're a lot of fun to watch. They show a little bit about what we do. John Worth just had a comment up there and that, on the East Coast, it's like we're also the sea pilots as well as the docking pilots. So we will bring the vessel up the bay, and then we also work with the tugs to get them alongside.
Also docking,
Yeah,
You
most ports on the East Coast have a system of sea pilots and docking pilots, and they are separate organizations and do it. But we're one of the ones that do it all.
You do the whole enchilada. And my God, I take my hat off to you. I think you guys are incredible. For mariners, you are top notch, and you gotta be, and there's just no mistaking. So it's just seamanship of the first magnitude. You're great guys. Well, that concludes the program. Any questions anybody has, speak right up. We've done all these different captain's quarters presentations, and you can go on YouTube and see any of the other ones, all the different schooners, all the way down to schooner cooks, as well as tugboats and so on. The last one we did before this was square rigger captains, and it was a 2-hour show, but very popular. We had a big audience. And now we have concluded the pilots of Penobscot Bay. 2 weeks from now, on November 21st, we have Captain Jack Kroll. He was an Arctic explorer, took 4 different vessels north for Donald McMillan, including the schooner Bowden, and spent a lot of time in the Arctic. He took the schooner Gertrude Thibault, which was a very famous Gloucester fishing schooner, up into Frobisher Bay and that came, the thumbnail's distance of total disaster. But he'll be telling all of that, telling about that whole program in 2 weeks. Then we're going to talk about the schooner Bowden and show some of Donald McMillan's original footage that he brought back from the Arctic on the 5th of December. Then we're going to close up until the new year. So stay tuned to the world famous Sail Power Steam Museum, South Rockland's finest maritime museum. Are there any questions? Please unmute and let us know. And if you want to have a good book, something to while away the hours, for a $25 donation, you get a free book. Oh my God, what a deal. My memoirs, 40 years of voyaging, and some of it's even true.
I don't have a question, Captain, but I wanted to give a shout out to the Braceys and ask Captain Skip Bracey if we got it right. Northeast pilot for many decades.
Yeah. Well, in your business, you got to get it right. That's
Yeah,
all there is to it.
Their son was also a really good pilot boat operator.
Great, good. Okay, well, we thank you all for coming, and we'll see you on YouTube. How'd that be?
Excellent.
All right, thank you, Captain. Thanks for having us. It was fun to chat with everyone.
Thank you. Wishing you smooth seas.
We'll see you at the museum.